Good afternoon. Today is Friday, May 10th, 2024. This is the Ocean Pines Association Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee meeting. We are having a hybrid meeting. We have some of us here in person and some joining us on the Teams link. So we are going to call this meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. And we do have quorum today. Yay. It was a little tough last month. But we do have quorum, so we can conduct business today. Is everyone, the committee members, okay to agree that this meeing is to be recorded and shared later?
Yes.
Yes. All right, great. Thank you. Now we'll introduce the committee members. So my name is, would you be able to give him or type in the password for him? He takes some notes on his phone.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. I'm Laura Pangras, and I am the chairperson for the Bylaws Committee, and I've been a full-time resident for about 2 years. So Pam, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Pam Ferrendi. I live at 92 Watertown Road. We've been a resident since 1991.
Thank you. Keith, you want to go ahead?
Keith Kaiser, committee member, resident since 2014.
Augie, are you able?
Augie Flenzy, a part-time resident. We've had a home here since 2014.
Okay, thank you. And Camilla is joining us, committee member online. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Camilla Rogers. We live over at the Point, and we have been here since 2018.
Okay, great. Thank you. And would our board liaison like to introduce himself, please?
Steve Jacobs, board liaison.
Thank you very much. And then we do have two guests with us. Would you like to introduce yourself, Bob?
Sure. Bob Hilligus, former committee member and resident for 25 years.
Okay, thank you. And Jim? I think he's looking on mute. Are you unmuted, Jim? Yeah, I don't know. Can you do it?
No, you can't. Somebody.
Oh, there we go. No. Okay.
Privacy
Did
purposes.
you get it? No, it still looks muted.
He's still muted.
And while we're
It's not
getting
us.
Jim
It's not us.
unmuted, we also have Mr. Keith, our IT guy here. Thank you very much.
But I can hear you fine in my office, so this sit up in this room is fine.
Yeah.
All right,
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great. Makes it easier for him to do the minutes. Thank you. Did Jim figure it out yet?
You're still muted, Jim.
He can't hear
Okay, well, that is Jim.
He waved us off.
You keep working on it, Jim, because I'm sure we want to be able to hear you for our discussion. But Jim Turmel is joining us as a former committee member and as a resident now as well. Let's see, approval of agenda is next up on the agenda. Is there, for the committee members, is there anything that you would like to amend or add to the agenda? I have the unfinished business and the new business topics listed.
No,
We're good? Okay. All right, so hearing no changes, then the agenda is approved as presented. Now, we did not technically have quorum last month in April, but based on our recorded discussion, our note taker Augie was still able to put together some notes for us. So technically they do not have to be approved, but we can, is there anything on here that anybody thinks needs to be corrected or changed for that? And unless you do want to approve them in order for us to post them, do you want to post them as a discussion, not labeled as minutes or on the website? Or do we just want to say we don't have minutes for that meeting that get posted? You know what I mean? That these are just for us then internally.
I move I move, I move that we post it.
Okay. Does anybody have any objections to that? Does anybody see any corrections that need to be for that? All right, so then hearing no corrections and no objections to them being, there's an outlet right there.
Oh, well, he's already over there.
There behind that chair.
Oh.
See it?
I'm not sure what this one is very.
So we will consider these discussion notes as approved, and we will share them and get them posted on the website for our April meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Back to the agenda. All right. At this point, public comments are up on the agenda. Bob, do you have anything you would like to share?
I have nothing to offer at this time.
Further down, okay. And Jim, were you able to figure out your mute situation?
Still muted.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I don't know what yeah. And there was no spot on there that we could unmute him?
No, it's at his end. It's not here.
Does he know he's muted?
That's what you can say. It's at his end.
So that on his end, he can't do it? I
Well,
mean,
he can. But
Oh,
we
he
can't
can
pick
do
that.
He doesn't know he's muted.
No, we can't unmute him.
oh,
Only he can do that. If we had muted him, we could unmute him, but he muted himself somehow.
Gotcha. Only other option I can think of is if Jim wants to
Important
leave
thoughts.
and then come back in, and you know, when that window pops up, you can choose to mute yourself or not.
Yeah.
Oh.
What's it say?
Muted.
What did it
Muted.
say?
Jim, you want to log out and log back in?
Log back in, myself.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. We will say there's no public comments at the moment, other than a nice handwritten note. Hopefully we'll get this figured out for him. So next up is chairperson's report. That is me. So basically, I did attend in person the directors meeting that was held on April 20th. I emailed Michelle to add our agenda for today's meeting to the website. I'm sure she'll get that posted for us. And then the biggest thing was I attended the Ocean Pines Work Group actual spring kickoff expo. We've been talking about it for so long that we actually had the event on April 20th. So I did the directors meeting in the morning and went straight over to do that. Keith assisted with that, and he brought a TV monitor that we used like a computer monitor, and he had his iPad connected to it. And so I'll let Keith add anything to it, but I think it went pretty well. For the people that we spoke to, we were able to show them, pull up the actual OPA website, show them how to find the different documents that they were looking for or had questions about. So all in all, I think it was a very good event. Bob also attended and hung out at our table with us and assisted. And then there is supposed to be a final wrap-up meeting sometime after the 15th, but I don't know when that'll be of this month. I will try to attend that or at least submit some notes if you have any notes on what you think went well and what didn't, because I do think they want to make this an annual event. Obviously, I think one of the biggest thing was the loading in of the vendors, the traffic jam that kind of happened from that. If we could figure out a better way to get everybody in, unload their stuff, and then go park, that would probably be helpful. I'm trying to think. I brought the leftover candy that we had at the table, so you may feel free to have some of that. And then, yeah,
Some cookies too.
I got a
Cookies.
whole lot. And then Augie brought us lovely snacks too. So we're a committee that likes to have snacks. So Keith, would you have any input on that?
Yeah,
event?
just a comment about that. I think we need to try to encourage Public Works or somebody from CPI to have a table.
Yes,
Because most of the people that approached us had those kind, can I put up a fence? Can I do this? Can I do that? And
right. Or the art committee.
Yeah.
themselves,
yeah, somebody that, and we would say, we'd always have to start out by saying, well, that's not us.
Right.
But, if you're looking for that information, and we'd show them where the documents are, and we tell, call Public Works and
Right.
that kind of thing. So I think it would have been helpful if
Yeah.
they'd actually had somebody
And
there.
there were some other advisory committees there. There was like the Marine Committee, the Environmental Committee,
Aquatics.
strategic planning was there. We were there. All the amenity ones, they're like aquatics and the racket sport and golf
Yeah.
and all of that.
But there were new Ocean Pines members. I mean, some of the people literally just moved in.
Right.
And so they didn't have, they didn't have any negative or positive opinions developed yet. They were just trying to figure everything out, wondering what's going on. They just had kind of general questions, and I think it just would have been helpful if Public Works or CPI or
Right,
or
yeah,
somebody had a
yeah.
table there and could have answered some of the, not specifically, yes, you are authorized, but in general,
Right.
these are
How
the
does
types
this
of things that are.
process work if we need to take down trees
Yes,
and,
exactly.
all of that kind of stuff. So, but that was a lot of the stuff that we fielded. But like you said, we tried our best by saying we don't so-called make the rules or the guidelines, but
For the keeper of the document.
yeah, right. We were the keepers. That's how we kept saying it.
Yeah.
We're the keeper of the rules. So.
And we could show them, we were connected to the internet, so we could show them on the screen how to navigate from the Ocean Pines homepage to the different documents and pull them up. Even one person said, well, how do I know what section I'm in?
Right.
And I said, just go up to the search block, type in the word section. It's the first thing that comes up, pulls up a map, and there you go.
Yeah.
And they were able to look it up. So there were, that was
Right.
appreciated by a number of people.
And we had a good location actually where we were, so,
Yeah,
and they had food trucks and all that kind of stuff and lots of
It was a good
businesses in the
event.
area, so,
it was a good event. It was pretty amazing. There was a lot of people there.
right, right.
It was nice.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, I think it was very positive.
Well, and thankfully, luckily, the weather worked for that weekend.
Yes.
If you look at the weather the weekend after, it was not so great. That was gonna be our,
Alternate.
rain date, yes, so we
Yeah.
kind of snuck that in there just at the right time, so. So anyway, I do appreciate you, doing that with us, I guess, if we do this again next year, I think we should offer, if possible, the same type of thing. And I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us as well. Now, so my tasks still to come are, the directors meeting that will be next week on the 18th. However, I will not be in attendance there in person because I will be out of town. It's my one time to go visit my mother and my two daughters. So I'm going to be gone that week. I will be back on the 23rd. So I will watch the replay because I can't guarantee I'll live stream it depending on what we're doing, but I will watch the replay later. Okay, and then we're getting closer to, there's only 2 more directors meetings there. So does anybody have any questions for me on my report?
Do you want to go back and try to do a radio check with
Okay.
Jim?
Jim, were you able to figure out your mute situation?
You still mute.
He's still
Still
muted.
muted. Yeah.
No, you're still muted.
Can you see the little microphone?
Can't hear you.
Oh, I can
Can you hear it?
hear.
He can hear us.
Oh, he can hear us.
He can hear us. We just can't hear him.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a little microphone with a slash through it. And then
Okay.
there's 3 dots beside it.
All right, how about now?
There you go. Now you're good.
There you go. You got it.
All right, great. So Jim, we can backtrack. And did you have any public comments at this time? Leave yourself unmuted. Or do you just want to wait and comment as we go through the agenda?
No, I have no comments at this time.
Okay, perfect. Good. We got it. All right, so let me get rid of this.
Team effort.
We don't need that. Go back here. Up next is our board liaisons report. Steve, do you have anything you would like to share with us, since our last meeting?
I don't. I think what's
Okay.
listed in the unfinished business part of the agenda
Okay.
sort of covers. all
Okay,
of this.
great. All right, thank you. So under unfinished business status updates, we've already gone over and talked more about the work group expo. So again, that was just completed. So I'm happy about that. The ARC guidelines, did have a second reading, which was completed, amended, and passed at the April directors meeting. I don't know if we have a note in there under the governance tracker yet, but we can at least post that then. Under CO1, which is committee general, the second reading was completed at the April directors meeting and passed. CO3, which was the budget and finance resolution, did get its second reading at the April directors meeting, and that, remember, was just to correct the numbering in the document, so that was passed.
Well, so hang on, let's back up there for a second. So
Uh-huh.
B1,
Mhm.
second reading was completed when?
Last 14.
April, the April 20th directors meeting.
Okay, so that's basically, that's the new effective date. Okay, and then C3, same thing, April 20.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
The
Activity.
M06 elections, second reading was originally scheduled to be on that April directors meeting, but that was taken off that agenda and rescheduled for a special directors meeting that was held on 4/27/24, which at that meeting, that the special meeting, according to what I saw, it passed then. And then that was also a discussion that the directors had with the elections committee to confirm the contract or the contractor for the elections, for an elections company to handle both ballot and online voting, which was approved at the 4/27 meeting. Okay.
Laura, is that for this election cycle too?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So does anybody have any questions on, that's all I had under the unfinished updates there. That was from there. The only other items which really do not pertain to us, that were done at the April 20th meeting is there was discussion on establishing a historical work group, not hysterical, historical. Which Elaine Brady had brought forth, which nobody was opposed to, and basically just to keep track of the 50 years of history. We've had the 50th anniversary and all that, so they've gathered some of the stuff. They just want to have an official group that maintains it. So I think they're working on forming that. There was discussion that in the community center building, the East Room and the other room they're updating their names, I think, to be a little bit more clearer about who they're named after. So the one that I think was formerly known as the Capacity or the Marlin Room, I don't know, I get them all mixed up over there, but now one of those rooms will be called the Anna Foltz Room. And I did not write down the first name of East. I think it's Phyllis. Phyllis East is a person here, a former person. I don't think she's living now, but who was very important to Ocean Pines for many years. So that's how that one got named after. her. So they just wanted to make it more obvious why it's called the East Room. It's not because it's north, south, east, or west. You know what I mean? So, so that was the only other discussion that I have notes on from the 420 meeting. We will discuss C14 under new business. So, does anybody have any other questions on that?
I think the person you're referring to was the one that was the executive secretary for many, many years.
Yes, yes, I think you're correct. Phyllis sees that.
Right.
That's right. Okay, so under new business, at the 420 meeting, C14 is the Racket Sports Advisory Committee. There was a motion made by the president to repeal and remove this committee from all existence at that meeting. The motion passed. So I have it on our agenda partly to say we need to update our forms then that according to that director's meeting, C14 doesn't exist anymore. So we can say, you know, they have no more updates at this time for that.
Then that was,
However, was this the correct process to remove an advisory committee was another question that I had.
what's the as of date?
I would say as of 420, because it was at the April 20th director's meeting when that was brought forth by the president of the board. And it did not pass unanimously. However, it did pass.
But
So,
it didn't follow the correct procedures. That's the issue.
What is the correct procedure?
That's C1.
2 readings.
Huh.
As defined in the
all right, so I have
PO1.
C01 pulled up. I need to find it. Hold on.
Yeah.
This is all the red lines that was updated and filling vacancies is listed. Meetings is talked about, minutes, reports, and effective date. Do you have a specific section that you know?
Yeah, go back up. It's so close to the beginning.
It's under where?
Keep on.
I think you're looking for B01. We're talking about the,
C01.
B01. That's what it is.
All right, so this is C0.
Okay, that's why I couldn't find it.
Like, doesn't matter. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can pull that one up.
Now this,
Together after all.
you have B01 up now.
that's C01.
All right, so B01, right? Okay, let me make it a little bit bigger here.
So this is how to.
Okay.
That's the resolution.
I think you need to go to the bottom of this first page and then perhaps continue over to the second page.
Procedures, oh, okay. Number 3, procedures for introducing, approving, and repealing resolutions.
You don't have
So
it.
A says notice and first reading.
Scroll
You
down.
don't have it.
Oh, is it not up there?
You don't have it up on the screen yet.
Oh, what's it still on? Oh, is it not moving? There it goes. Okay.
There you go. Procedure 4.
My computer's moving faster than that screen up there, so. Oh, now I moved it again. There we go. There we go. All right, so A says notice and first reading, proposed resolution, including amendment to or the repeal of an existing resolution shall require consideration by the board of directors during at least 2 open meetings of the board. The first reading shall be at a regular meeting of the board. First reading submittal is not by motion. The proposal shall appear on the agenda of each meeting of the board of directors at which it is to be considered. Copies shall be distributed to each member of the Board of Directors and made available to OPA members with the notice of the agenda that is released to the membership before each meeting. Revisions to the proposed resolution may be made at the first meeting at which it is considered or at any subsequent meeting. But the proposed resolution cannot be adopted at the first meeting at which it is considered. Section B then says, resolution action responsibility. The board member who submits a resolution action for first reading is responsible for providing a sufficient description of the action. If action is subsequently approved, the board member is responsible for providing the secretary with a final copy for signature approval. C is the attachment to this resolution provides directions for resolution amendments. D, adoption of resolution actions. At any special or regular open meeting of the Board of Directors subsequent to the first meeting at which a proposed resolution action has been introduced, the board may adopt the resolution on a second reading, including amendments duly proposed and voted on, provided the proposed resolution is included in the published agenda and lot owner comments are permitted before the resolution is acted upon. The consideration of a resolution action may extend beyond the second reading meeting if necessary. And then E is the adoption by the Board of Directors. If a proposed resolution or action on an existing resolution is adopted, it shall be recorded in the board minutes and filed in the Book of Resolutions. The Secretary of the Association shall obtain the required signatures for an adopted resolution action and verify that the original signed copy is filed in the Book of Resolutions. Applicability. You want me to cover all of that? There's
No.
section on duration and consistency, resolution review, legal review.
I think the relevant part is a simple statement that a repeal also requires 2 readings. Most of what you just read, Laura, really applies, to an action to amend or introduce a new resolution entirely. The main point with regard to C14 is that the repeal of resolution requires 2 readings.
Where's that, Jim?
Go back, scroll back up.
So really,
Under that paragraph is, I think it's paragraph perhaps 3.
To
It
the-
starts at the
For
bottom of
introducing,
page 1.
approving, and repealing.
Yeah, that's,
resolutions.
that basically sums it up, that one paragraph.
That's the,
And or repeal of an existing, you know,
Yeah,
pretty clear.
Jim, this was the second time, I think, well, it was the second time that committee was repealed or that amendment. But the first time was done properly.
that's correct, yes.
And
There had to be a reminder that it required 2 readings, but it did go through the repeal. The prior repeal did go through 2 readings.
so since it does not seem that it was actually done in the correct manner, is it truly official? And who would be the person to share this information with the rest of the directors? Because we know there will be some discussion against probably what is here that they view it as already done, because the 7 directors are split to begin with, and I do not want to put our liaison in a position that makes it even more difficult.
Jim, do we think they could fix this by voting again at the next meeting? Just to treat that and then kind of whatever was done last time?
Well, I think Laura is correct, not correct. I agree with her comments regarding what kind of a reception this would receive. If the action's taken, so what kind of
it's done.
response? It's not gonna change kind of response. I do think, again, it's my personal opinion, I'm not a member of the committee. It's appropriate to remind the board that we're doing resolution actions, and that includes repeal of a resolution. You need to make sure you're following what the resolution B01 says.
So, question. I don't think I watched that board meeting. So was the discussion at that meeting about disestablishing that advisory committee
Yes.
versus canceling a resolution?
It was suspending the committee, so it
And getting rid of
eliminated
it
a
completely.
committee.
Right. In other words, they didn't talk about the resolution.
It did.
They voted to get rid of a committee.
If I may,
Which
they did not
C14
discuss-
pertains to that.
They did
committee.
not discuss resolution C14, which applies to RSAC.
Right.
Right.
What the motion was, is to, for lack of a better term, close the committee,
Right.
just kill it off.
So that's my point.
Right.
So they may have gotten rid of that committee, but they did not address this resolution.
So
So the question, I think, the reasonable question from us is, since the committee was dissolved, does this resolution get dissolved as well? Because for all we know, there may be some reason they want to keep it around, who knows?
or rewrite.
Or rewrite it somehow, I don't know, some kind of generic fashion
Right.
that somehow encompasses that action. I don't know, but I think it's reasonable for us to go back to the board and say, since you got rid of that committee, are you keeping this, yes or no? And if you're not gonna keep it, then it's gonna
Well,
require,
On the agenda though, it is written, on the agenda, it said motion to repeal resolution C14 in parentheses racket sports committee. So I think then, to your comment, and to, I cannot remember off the top of my head exactly either, what the official motion they actually verbalized and put forth. Did it say the resolution
and,
and the committee,
And
or
yeah.
just the committee
Right.
part? That's where I think we do need some clarification.
because if they didn't, if after, if within their discussion that occurred at the end of that, the motion, specific motion was to get rid of the committee, and they did not include the resolution in that, then I think it's reasonable for us to go back and say, you got rid of the committee, you didn't specifically have a motion to get rid of the resolution. So now we need to know what you want to do with this resolution. And oh, by the way, per B01, it will require first and second reading to get rid of it.
Right.
I think.
Right.
I don't remember. I mean, I was there, but I do not remember what the full final motion that they verbalized was presented.
Well, let me, if I can, the motion itself discusses the fact that since we now had a professional director for racket sports, there was really no need for an advisory committee at all. That was sort of it was the record, as I recall, relatively short. You can pull up the resolution by going back to the board agenda and the packet that was sent. It'll be online. My own view is that if the concern of this committee is what to do with C14, the simple answer is just to include a note in the governance document that says the Racket Sports Advisory Committee was disbanded, repealed, whatever term you want to use, on this date by a board vote. If the issue that this committee is concerned about is that the proper procedure was not followed, my suggestion would be that it would be appropriate for the committee to send a letter to the board, to the president, and to all the board members and to council, making that observation and, pointing out that this is what needs to be addressed. Now, what the board does after that, I don't know.
Right.
Frankly, I don't think it's going to change anybody's view one way or the other. But I mean, to the extent that we are following our governing documents, the board would be required to follow B01. I mean,
Is there a process for taking people off a committee?
yes.
They suspended the committee.
both any committee and any committee member serves at the pleasure of the board. So the board has the right by motion to take a committee member off, take more than one committee member off.
Steve,
Yes,
if I could interject here for just a minute. This was, I think that most of the committee knows, a very inflammatory and highly debated experience, because there was a thought that the committee itself was taking over the governance of the racket sports, and there was a big problem, with staff turnover there with the director's position, and that has kind of stabilized now. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because until I had my foot surgery, I was very much involved in the tennis committee and everything else, and served as board liaison to that committee at one time. So what we're saying is that their motion was not incorrect, but their intent to dissolve a resolution was not carried out appropriately. Is that where we are?
yeah, well, I think that's correct. I'm not suggesting, ultimately it's the decision of this committee. I'm not suggesting that the committee communicate to the board in any way as to the appropriateness of the content of or the appropriateness of maintaining or getting rid of the Racket Sports Advisory Committee. That's not my suggestion.
Right.
My suggestion is that I think this committee, if it so believes it should inform both the board and council that the action taken at the April meeting did not follow B01.
Okay.
As to whether that's appropriate, that's up to the board.
Right.
Right.
It's not important to us to know why, in a way that if there was any dissension, any going out of bounds, anything, that does not pertain to us in any of our decisions. All we are looking
Exactly.
is if the procedure was followed, because if we are the keepers, then that's what we can see that someone didn't double check the procedure to do this and just thought bringing a motion forward would be enough, then it is our responsibility to say, hey, B01 does exist and it's addressed in here on the process on how to do what you want to do, right?
Right.
Because for me, if they're going to also say, about, well, you have a staff person who can take care of all the racket sports. Well, you also have staff people who do golf.
And aquatics.
But you have three
Aquatics like the director.
So,
Well,
again,
But the point is, the point is, these are the boards, these are their resolutions,
right.
how they say they're going to conduct business. So you didn't conduct business in accordance with your own, no, this is basic auditing stuff, right? You get audited on your own
Right.
rules first. Well, these are your rules.
Right.
So, and if you think for whatever reason that that's not needed, well, then we'll go back and we'll update B01 and we'll take it out.
Right.
But we
But
need,
because it's still here,
right.
right. So-
Now, we do need to go back and review before, I agree with Steve that I think it's appropriate that you just draft up an email to all the board and address this issue. But before that, do that, probably need to go back and watch that vote and just see
listen to
specifically
it,
what
right.
the motion was. Because I don't think they specifically included the resolution.
I mean, the way they wrote it on the agenda made it sound like
Eliminated
it, but I
the
don't
committee,
think the
didn't eliminate the
final
rest.
actual action
Yeah.
is set.
So it
Or-
might,
the resolution should be on the website. You go down to, I think it's meeting packets or something like that.
Yeah.
But
The motion specifically says move to repeal resolution C14 in its entirety. Now, that doesn't, as I think as Laura might have said a minute or so ago, doesn't reflect what the actual motion in verbal form before the board was. You'd have to go back and look at the video and or the minutes of the meeting, which have not been published. But the motion itself the motion form, the proposed motion form itself says motion, move to repeal resolution C-14 in its entirety. Now, on that basis, you would be going, my observation, you would be going back to the board or the board president and say that this was not followed. If necessary, I would say it's probably a need may be to go back and look at the video at this point in time to see what the actual motion was. But that would be an inconsistency itself if that's what the proposal was and the actual motion didn't match that proposal. Anyway, I just want to make sure we were talking about what the motion was. And I thought it was important to get back to what was actually this is from the meeting materials. I've got them up on my other screen.
What page?
I'm pulling up the
Yeah.
April packet to see what's in there, but
If-
this is like the biggest
Yeah.
packet ever.
I think you have to go fairly well to the very close to the very beginning, very ending, I'm sorry, of the meeting materials. I'm scrolled almost all the way to the end.
It's gonna be,
Yeah,
it's gonna be.
but
before
I think the most important thing would be
Going up.
that what Keith brought up is if the board feels that's appropriate, then this committee should change the procedures and say a committee can be eliminated without a second reading by the board of directors, period. Make it simple.
Change whatever they want.
I mean, they can do what they want, but we need to, if the committee is going to keep everything checked to make sure we stay in compliance, we need to change that, and then the committee needs to see if that affects anything else in any other resolution.
Yeah, and I would just say, I think it's appropriate to make sure that council gets a copy of whatever you decide
Yeah.
to send to the board as well.
Okay, so here's the proposed motion form that they used at the April 20th meeting. It says the motion, move to repeal resolution C-14 in its entirety. Purpose and effect, resolution C-14 defines the details and purpose of the Racket Sports Advisory Committee. Then it gives the background of why they think it would be best to do this, but then of course, we don't have the exact, what the final motion actually was
Well,
worded.
that's it.
That's
The motion was not
That's
amended. The
Okay,
motion wasn't amended at all.
Yeah.
It passed by a 6-1 vote.
So verbally, that's what they said.
That's it. That's what was offered and voted on. It was not amended in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the debate,
Well,
in all candor, the debate did not reflect the content of the resolution.
right.
I would agree.
But
Definitely agree with Steve. The discussion was mostly, if not entirely, a discussion of misperformance, improper performance, however you want to describe it, of committee members or the committee in general. The background certainly has a reasonable content. It's saying that the amenity can be better managed through the staff of the association without a committee being required to do so. I'm in agreement with Steve. What the motion says and what the discussion at the meeting were not the same.
Right. I am willing to try and draft up something. I'll rewatch the meeting again before, and I'll try and draft something up. Send it to just us first, just the committee members, here first, before we officially say it's all approved. And then we can forward it to the full board of directors and include legal and all of that, or send you to send to them, however you feel it's best that we do this. I don't want to cause any extra conflict.
I think we should send it to the board,
Okay.
address it to the
Because
board
we-
president,
Right,
or, use the director's email, that
Yeah.
group email address, but address it to the director,
include,
at all board members, and CC council and CC our liaison separately, since he's our liaison.
right,
I think it should come from us, not
okay.
not VSD.
I agree. I would, I prefer to see it that way too. So I will work on that over the weekend, because I need time to be able to rewatch that section. If anybody else has, wants to take a stab at it, or or once you see what I have put forth, let's make some edits to it or whatever, so that when we send it, we're all in agreement on it. Okay, the 5 of us. If our 2 former members want to give some input, that's fine, but ultimately it's the 5 of us that have to agree on it before it moves forward. Okay.
Laura, I'll be happy to work with you in any way you need. If you need another set of eyes, or if you need anything at all. I retired this week, so I have a little more time.
Congratulations. So we're going to fill your time up now, right? All right. Well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right.
Well, I don't need to be involved in any review of what you're going to send.
Okay. Okay.
I prefer stick with the committee only for me anyway.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there any further discussion on that topic, the C14? See if I can go back to the agenda. Okay, so we agree, we know what our next steps are going to be for that one, right? All right, so I did include the M09 because we keep pushing this one off a little bit. This is the search committee one. Keith, I don't know if.
Do you happen to have my red line?
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
I saw you had a note in the
Yeah.
margin and all that.
This is,
Okay.
yeah,
There you go.
this is it.
All right, well, they're blue. Does that count? Is
Yeah,
that the
my
right?
copy had a note or something in the margin. Keep
Because I
Okay.
have 2 copies. I have the clean copy, and I also have of the original, and then I have your red line here.
Cammy, were you ever able to take a look at this?
Yes, I did. I sent it back.
To,
I think maybe those are my blue lines.
no, it's KK, that's me.
Oh, okay. Yes, I did take a look at that. See if I can pull it up.
I don't think I have one that had,
I
that I
didn't,
got that had Camilla's.
I didn't get anything. Well, while she's pulling that up, so this has been a while back now, so I'm trying to remember. What was it about this? We had to incorporate, didn't we have to incorporate some language or something in this because of the bylaws change?
That's my recollection, Keith.
Yeah, and in other words, we couldn't just I know what it was. We couldn't just simply say we get rid of M9. If the consensus is no search committee, just get rid of it. We couldn't, because the bylaws specifically talk about the search committee and or this resolution, which means if you got rid of this, you'd have to go back and have to change the bylaws. So I think what I was trying to do when I first started messing with this was to change the language in a way such that this could be retained without a mandate.
Of having the actual committee?
Yes. Yeah, so it was discretionary. And so I removed a bunch of language. Some of the language I removed because I thought it was repetitive of other documents. And some of it I removed because it was obligatory language that said you must, which we're not. So, if we're going to rewrite this to reflect reality, then the must stuff has to come out. So if we want to look through this, just, scroll through what's on the screen here.
All right, we'll start at the beginning.
That's
a very good place to start.
That's the first blue lines there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I recommended here deleting that, the majority of that, and just replacing it with provides the authority to establish a search committee.
Yeah. That's
Hang
good.
on, at 3A, which is right at the top of the screen, that needs to be changed from February 1st to March 1st.
That's what that was. I knew that there was something with that.
It's changed above, yeah, it was February 1st in 2B, but that's been deleted, but it needs to be changed to March 1st in 3A.
Okay, thank you. I got that. That's good. Good job. All right, so let's see, what was next? So the application form. Yeah, so so this one I had a concern about because this is essentially an exception, right? To the deadline.
Yeah.
And my concern / question was that this exception is not in the bylaws. So is it okay to put an exception here that's in addition to the bylaws? Can the resolution be more strict than the bylaws, or is it vice versa? I just don't know.
The thinking on that kind of thing has been it cannot alter the bylaws, but it can extend the bylaws in a reasonable amount where appropriate. It's pretty vague words, but the bylaws do not have an exact end time on the 10th. And that's what this does. It as well as it puts in the provision regarding if the 10th is not a business day. Neither of those, the time of the day nor the issue of a non-business day is not addressed in the bylaws. So this is amplifying what's in the bylaws. It's not any significantly different. And I'm giving you my understanding of this as the past practices, which I agree with, but it's not it's the same thing as the elections provisions in which we have long detailed N06, but the elections in the bylaws are only maybe the substantive provisions in the bylaws don't extend more than about 100 words, including the and the type word.
No, I get what you're saying. You're saying this doesn't conflict with the bylaws, it just amplifies on it.
That's the short and simple answer, yes.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. Anybody else have a?
No, that's fine with me.
Okay. Steve just asked about the basement.
Sometimes it's safer to make it do before, but
What do you think?
I don't have a strong view.
Keith,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. One of my questions, and I remember calling my daughter because she's a screenwriter and asking her how to redline because I hadn't had to do that previously. But that being said, remember we were talking about what if, as in years past, there is no one who comes forth for the search committee? Did we need a provision here that there's an alternative to the search committee or not? Or do we always have to round up several people to be the search committee?
Well, I think if I'm remembering when I was tweaking this, that my goal was to remove obligatory language that said you had to have a search committee and instead soften the language in here that essentially said that if you do have a search committee,
Here's what.
then this is how it'll work.
Right. Okay.
That was the goal. That was my goal anyway.
So
I don't know if
yeah.
Look at your B that you had updated, you took out all the specifics there, but said provides the authority to establish a search committee. So
Yeah,
that gives them room that if nobody wants to be on the search committee, they don't have to have one. But if they do, and the current board wants a search committee, then they have the authority to make it active, right?
Yeah, if
The
at the end of the day, you have a search committee, you gotta follow this.
Right.
And I can't remember
Okay.
I can't remember the exact language in the bylaws.
The bylaws say the lack of a search committee shall not affect the validity of the election.
That's right.
Is that in there? Because I would put that in there.
I would too.
That's, well, you can do it by citing the section of the bylaws.
Or, yeah, just cite that section, but
Yeah, that's probably better because if the bylaws change, then you refer back to the bylaws.
So I think it would be under section 2 here, under authority, where we're basically citing the bylaws. Then maybe a C, add a paragraph. Can you scroll up,
Which one? Where?
scroll back up to section 2.
This one?
Keep
Is
going,
that what you're saying?
keep going,
two.
keep
I
going,
can't hear you.
keep going.
You're talking to the screen.
Right there, okay. So maybe add a C here
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and say, per section, 502, yada, 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 of the bylaws, lack of a certain, you can quote that or refer to it or say, what do you think? What do you think?
I like your language, Keith. Lack of a search committee does not negate an election process or
Affect
something
the
like that.
election.
Okay, well, I'll draft in a C there with that
Okay.
language and cite that section of the
It's
bylaws.
the same section.
Yeah, I'll cite, okay. Okay,
But you can probably add it.
Or you can just add it to the end of.
or add it to B.
Add a sentence.
Add it to
I
the
don't
end
know
of
if
B.
you need a separate subsection.
Yeah.
Bylaws provide for the authority to establish a search committee, and states further or something like that.
Any lack of a search committee does not invalidate.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That
So
sounds good.
you're gonna write that part, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, I'll do that.
All right.
Okay, now back down, now we're in section 5 down there. Let's see, what did I remove? Oh, I lined out a whole bunch of mandatory shall stuff. So I don't know if you guys remember back when all this was going down, but there was a debate about what does the committee do versus what does the secretary do,
Mhm.
right? And I thought at the end of the day, the decision is that these were responsibilities of the secretary, not specifically the committee. And I think that's why I lined these things out. Does anybody remember that, or is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate because I was the secretary back at Mr. Farr's original election, as you might recall.
So
And
then
that
this, go ahead.
the things that are listed here, the role of the secretary is to make sure that all of this stuff is verified. Go over to Worcester County and also look at the MDAT, the SDAT records and ensure the eligibility based on property ownerships. So, yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't the committee. It really truly was the validation of eligibility, which had to be done by the secretary.
Okay, so then this is accurate to remove what I have lined out here.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so moving on to the header there on the committee, I changed shall to may. Once again,
Yeah.
trying to soften
If
this
the
document
committee-
up.
right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if I'm not a lawyer, if that'll fly, but that was my intent anyway. Let's see, D. Complete an application must be submitted to the search committee box in the administration. So I removed that stuff in D because I don't think that's what we do, or we don't do it like that anymore. About
Certainly don't do it if there's no search committee.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So
Seems like, yeah.
I mean, we don't have a search committee box in admin, do we?
Right. There hasn't been for the last couple of years, I don't think.
I think that the applications were just simply turned into the secretary in John Viola's office.
Yeah. So are we okay? Anybody, any discussion on removing that stuff that's lined out in D? Or should it be replaced with something? I don't know.
A couple of comments there. One that has not been discussed, and I didn't think of it until this morning myself, was to whether or not there needs to be something in there regarding how the application form makes its way to the association. Is it intended to be only in-person submittal of the original application? Or could it be mailed in addition to in-person submittal or presentation, however you want to describe that? Or could it be electronically transmitted? I just offer that as something that may be considered. I'm not suggesting any particular approach to that. However, I think it can be said that if you own property here and you're interested in being on the board of directors, you certainly should be here in the community once in a while, and to be able to have to deliver in person the original shouldn't be a hardship. But beyond that, I suggest that we retain the attachments A and B comprise the current application form. If you go to the association website now and call up the application form, it has only the attachment B, which is the information and the question and answers type of information. That attachment A, I think, should be considered a part of it. When you get the application or you call it up on online, you should be expected to be getting both those forms. The attachment A is an information form. I understand that, but other than in this resolution, it's the only place where it's stated that the attachment A is the only place that states the end of business or whatever. I may say 4 p.m., but the end of business on the 10th or the next business day. That's the only other place other than the resolution that it's stated. Again, that the form itself as attachment B. That's just my personal view that A and B should be considered the form itself. The applicant should know the information that's on A already. But the question is whether or not they do, or whether that helps many or in their preparation or not, maybe another question. But anyway, I have some other comments, but they come further on.
I have one question, and I say this at the risk of sounding naive. What are we trying to make as far as a differentiation between the election committee and the search committee?
Two entirely different bylaws committee, and in the past, the elections committee says they don't want to have anything to do with a search process for candidates.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was brought up like 2 years ago.
And both
and
committees.
Both committees, search didn't want to exist then.
Advertise.
Well, the election committee
And
said
then
get
the
rid of them.
election,
Right.
the election one didn't want to do anything additional other than
What's in the
the
election?
full, that's currently listed as election.
Both committees said get rid of the search committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly what happened.
So,
And there hasn't been one for 3
and if
years.
it wasn't for the fact that the bylaws specifically calls it out,
Right.
then we maybe could have.
Right.
But, until the bylaws are changed,
You've got to change this
yeah.
Right.
to match it as an option.
So I think, Cammie, we're just trying to do damage control now, basically, to try to get this document in some fashion or form to align as much as possible with
What is actually happening.
what's currently in the bylaws and what's actually going on, because as it stands today, the document is essentially useless.
Right.
And nobody asked us to do it.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
just, we took on ourselves here because it's an
Because
inconsistency.
no one else is looking at it and
Yeah.
actually wanting to make a decision about it, even though this falls under the board, right?
Executive.
Again,
Because at the
I
end of the
think they
day,
just need a little direction. They don't want to do this part of the work. I think they would rather just ignore it, let it go. But then if we don't update and look at some of this stuff, you're gonna have people saying, but it says we should have a search committee and, and that we're not following our own rules again. So it all boils
Right.
down to just making things clearer and giving a little bit maybe more flexibility to the board to determine each year if there is a need or an interest of people to be on a committee. And if there is, then here's your process of what you do.
I think we just all have to be willing to accept the reality, though, that at the end of the day, we make this all nice and pretty and we submit it as a suggestion. The board can go, nope, thanks anyway.
Well,
Yeah, as it is, right.
Yeah, I don't want to deter us from continuing on through the resolution itself, the proposed amendments to it. But there are a couple things. One practical thing is that the bylaws specifically refer to the form as it being in resolution M09, and the current form that's in M09 is not the form that's posted on the website. The posted website form is the most recent approved board form for the application. Or it differs in a couple of maybe small points from what was approved in the bylaws. The form that's in current M09 does not completely correspond to the bylaws provisions for a candidate. So that's a practical matter as to something having to be done to M09. I think that was identified to the board last fall, but nothing happened. Now, getting more to the point I think is relevant, the issue of the search committee and what's going to be done about the search committee and the failure to appoint a search committee and reasons for not appointing a search committee has been a discussion item for some time. It was a discussion item back 2 years ago now when the current bylaws were amended. The search committee status and the provision in the bylaws were discussed at length in some 35-40 minutes in February of 2022. And the decision was made not to delete the search committee from the bylaws. Submitting this resolution to the board, I'm going to say should, maybe I should say hopefully, will bring that back in focus, that the search committee situation should not just be kicked down the road forever. Not forever, I apologize for the kind of wording. Not just be kicked down the road indefinitely.
Right.
It needs to be considered and not just left out there as an appendage that's ignored. Anyway, that's enough of my comment. There are two practical issues here. One, M09 doesn't pick up the right application form. We got along without it this time, okay. But the issue of the search committee itself needs to be addressed, and submitting a proposed amended M09, I think can bring that back into form or focus.
Yeah, I actually appreciate that, Jim, because I'd forgotten about that. So we took this on because at a minimum, we just needed to post a new form in here. At a minimum.
Right.
But then that would be editing the resolution by posting the new form in it. And if we're gonna edit the resolution, we want to make sure the rest of it's accurate. So that's what ended up leading to this.
That's how you got there.
That's how we got, yeah, okay. And I appreciate it. So that kind of brings it in my brain full circle back to how we got here. So I think there is, I think Jim though makes a point here about paragraph D, and maybe there should be some language there that makes it more specific how the application actually gets into the hands of the association.
How does that work? Like, how is it
You
actually?
know, can it be mailed, can it
Would
be
that be under
emailed?
D or,
Yeah, that used to be D there, where there was a box apparently.
yeah,
But if that's not gonna be the case anymore, then what is the case? Can it be mailed? Can it be? Because if there's an issue of a deadline by close of business, May 10th,
Right.
then that means that this application's gotta be dated and or hand delivered or something on a certain date.
I mean,
Unless
if
it's
you have the
posted.
deadline, then the application has to be submitted by the deadline. I don't know if you need to worry about establishing location plural. For the filing of the appropriate application. I think you can reference the fact that the application is available online.
mhm,
I don't recall whether you can do it electronically. I just
they'll complete it online and then submit it,
It's not,
unless they
it's not
turned it
designed.
into a PDF.
Right, you can pull it, you can print it out and fill it out and then submit it. I don't think, as I recall, you can complete it online and submit
Right,
it electronically.
Fillable, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
are they allowed to, after they hand fill it in, after they printed it, rescan it as a PDF and email it in to the office?
Well, to be honest with you.
Because they would still have the original signature on it, but you're not gonna see the ink right there.
Well,
It should just say, it should be submitted to the administration office and then they can decide how all that works.
If we back up here for just a second, what we're talking about here is under section 6, which is search committee responsibilities. So this section is about the responsibilities of the committee, not the candidate. This attachment A that Jim is talking about,
Okay,
this is the instructions to the candidate. So I think any language of that nature should be there in
Yeah.
appendix A, not here under search committee responsibilities.
right, because the search committee is not gonna mail it in,
There may not be a search committee.
Yes.
That makes
if
sense.
there is one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so.
Well, I'm wondering
yeah,
if
now, which-
all
which
of
one?
D should be removed.
Let's see, what's in there? Work with the GM appropriate staff. Submitted. So maybe maybe that first sentence should be changed to language that essentially says, ensure that the form is available via the website.
That's a good idea, Keith.
So what are we?
Which one is that? Is that E?
The,
Or D?
But
D.
the last sentence you cut out, you need that reference back in, as someone said. About attachments A and
attachments A and B. This resolution comprises the current application. Yeah, that's a good point. So work with the GM and the appropriate OPA staff to ensure location in the state where applications can be obtained and submitted. Or maybe just delete that first sentence and just add the paragraph and say committee members provide interested members of application forms directly, or they may be printed from the OPA website. Attachments A and B of this resolution comprise the current application form. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we just delete that first sentence.
I'm sorry, where are you?
On D, we're still on D.
We're still on D, okay.
Maybe just delete work with the GM and appropriate staff to establish locations, because that almost makes it sound like
Well,
if there is no search committee, then that's not going to happen.
right, and quite honestly, isn't that where some of the committees have gotten in trouble? Where are we giving them this particular search committee the privilege or opportunity to communicate directly with the
Staff.
GM?
Well, and staff, yeah. So
And so I think that
You could
leads
just say
to some
work with
question
GM
marks.
if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's where we're.
Well,
Well,
I
Go
had
ahead.
a chat with Miss Clifford today, who I guess she and Amy Peck are both applying for,
Let's not use names.
pardon me?
Let's not use specific names, just say. that you
Oh,
want
okay.
Conversation.
Well, I have knowledge that and actually they've published it, that there are two other individuals who are going to run for the board, and they told me that they had difficulty finding the application, and it seems that sentiment's being echoed here too. And where is it most fitting to put the location of the application into our governing documents?
Well,
I mean, if we're going to kind of get rid of the search committee, unless one just should so happen to form, if we are asked, where do I go get my application? I really like the idea of it being on the website, on the Ocean Pines website.
Well, the election committee, when they made their announcement, they posted where you could find the application in their announcement saying, this is kicking off. Here's the cycle, here's the timelines. They stated dates and stuff, but they also shared a link for where to find the
Yeah,
application.
the
That
social,
came from the election
Right now, if
committee.
you want.
yeah, the social.
Okay,
media-
so
Don't
that's my point, that if that comes from the election committee, then this doesn't really need to be in here at all. Would you agree?
Well,
Well, right. So again, under the paragraph of search committee responsibilities, I think, and I think this is to your point, that this first sentence works with down to obtained and submitted should just be deleted.
Yeah,
Because-
I think so too.
Because the election committee is the one that provided the link, did the advertisement, sent out the notices. It was in the OP newspaper.
so they kind of did.
Yeah.
They did
So,
take on a little bit of the search committee.
and then just
there.
keep the second sentence where it says committee members may provide interested members with application. So if we have a committee,
Right.
they may provide interested members with application forms directly, or they may be printed from the OPA webpage.
Mhm.
That's it.
And then keep that
That's
last
good.
sentence. And then keep that last sentence where it says attachments A and B to this resolution comprise the current application form.
Correct.
That's good, Keith. I would know what to do then.
Attachment A that's appended to this resolution is not appended to the application that's on the website.
Right, that's what Jim was saying.
Right.
Right.
And that needs to change. So that when you click on that link, you get both. You get the information sheet and then you get the
Yeah.
application.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
Because there's information on this information sheet about deadlines and processes and things that are helpful to the candidate.
Well, there should be some notation, maybe not in the body of the resolution, but perhaps as a recommendation that the attachment A has to be added to the website. It's where the application is on the website. Otherwise, there's really no direction to do it.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
In other words, if someone goes to the application that's on the website, they run that off, they fill it out, they send it in. They don't know about attachment A because they never get to this resolution.
Right.
So you need to sort of
emergency.
make sure somehow that attachment A is added to the application that is on the website at the other location.
Well, so this, again, this is under responsibilities of the committee, if it exists, so to speak. But I guess,
But even if the committee doesn't exist, it's, I assume what we're saying.
so is that in the election committee resolution?
Well, hold on. My point is that even if there's no search committee, I'm assuming the opinion of this committee that attachment A is necessary to go with attachment B
Yeah.
where it appears on the website under the board of directors.
Yeah, no, I'm
Right.
yeah, with you. My question is, by whose responsibility and direction was it put there in the first place? Because the search committee didn't stick it there, because when it showed up, we didn't have a search committee.
Well, okay.
So who created that link in the first place?
Well, because if you remember,
Two. Yeah.
last year, 2 years ago, two elections ago, there were three different, after we amended the bylaws, there were three different candidate application forms. None of them were the same, and they were
Right.
all wrong
Right.
because they didn't comport with the bylaws. So we changed that and we got the correct form, and then there were two different forms. One was the original form that I think we as a committee proposed, and the final form was the form that the board approved, and they were appearing in two different places on our website. So then we finally got that fixed, so that there's only one form, and it's, at the best of my knowledge, it's the one that appears on the website under the board of directors. I don't remember seeing one attached to this resolution.
Well, but the bylaws say the application form is the one provided and defined in resolution M09. So that's gotta
So
be
it may,
in there.
okay, maybe it was, I didn't have.
It's just not attached to
Right,
this.
that's what I'm
I
saying.
didn't bother with it because it's not the correct form. But
Right.
it's attachment B to
But
this.
what we need to make sure of is that the form that's attached to M09 is the same form, which is now the correct form
Correct.
that appears on the website under the board of directors.
Well,
And then we have to do the opposite. Then we have to take attachment A from this resolution and put it
Correct.
with that resolution,
Correct.
with that form.
correct. Well, and if we keep this last sentence, it specifically says attachments A and B to this resolution comprise the current application form.
That's correct. That's what it says in N09. But if you don't have attachment A attached to the form under the board of directors, then no one knows that attachment A exists. If they go there
I'm
first.
with you. My question is, who put that on there and created a link to it? I mean, did the board just tell IT, hey, can you guys stick this on there and make a link to it?
I think that's
I think that's
probably
probably
what
what
happened
happened.
because we had all these different forms
Yeah.
and we had to decide on,
Yeah.
this is the form, put it here. And that's what they
Right,
did.
so if the board did that without consulting the resolution first,
Which nobody even thought of because M09 didn't, the committee didn't exist.
right, but the resolution existed.
Wouldn't this,
The strange place to put the form.
The real problem you
Right,
have is
okay,
if
right, for the
they want to
board,
change
put
it
it
again.
up to track.
How's it gonna happen? Because
that's-
this could then be wrong.
Everything got.
They went out?
all over the
Yeah.
place.
If, my question is, if that form wants to change in the future and you're referring it in here, how do you prevent the mistake from happening that this form is different than the
Well-
one posted on the
So
website?
I can give you my 2 cents on
Yeah.
that. Back during the whole debacle where, as Steve points out, we had multiple versions of the
Right.
form.
I agree.
We weren't following our own rules because that form was part of this resolution, which meant in order to change, but we were up against a deadline. It was a lot of stuff going, a lot of balls in the air at that time.
Okay,
But the proper way to change that form was to change the resolution,
correct.
which means a first and second reading. That never happened. Everybody just focused on the form and just made changes to the form.
Because we were changing the bylaws. That's where all that had its.
Right, but this should have all changed together.
Right.
This resolution
Nobody thought about it.
should have changed at the same time. So the answer to your question going forward is once we get this thing updated with that form that's currently approved, then if they want to change that form, they got to change this resolution.
I mean, if you really wanted to clean this up, I think the bylaws would reference M06 for the form rather than M09, because M06 is the election resolution. And that's where you would naturally look to say, what do I do? But there, it refers to, well, to submit an application, look at 502 of the bylaws, and then 502 of the bylaws says, well, the form is on M09 of the resolution. So you're sort of going all over the place.
Well, no, you're right.
But the reason for that is because the elections committee views itself, that's the polite way to put it, as the committee that runs the election. And until the application process is not their problem. It's not their issue. In other words, they lay out the
Gotcha.
timeline, they lay out the procedure, they lay out who the contractor is going to be. Once the
Well, in that case, then they should take candidate applications out of M06 or whatever.
Yeah, but we're not gonna, right, I understand the point. What I'm saying to you is, elections committee, rightly or wrongly, views its function as somewhat different.
It's like a church.
Trying to get into the campaign itself.
And
They're basically saying, we run the campaign, you're gonna give us whatever we need to run the campaign, that's it, we're done.
It's like a church and state issue.
Yeah.
They don't want to get involved with the candidates themselves. They don't want to have anything to do with that.
Right.
They're just dealing with the logistics of the process of the election itself.
Get the. vote
But
ballot.
to your point, Augie, I mean, you're right. The problem is to change the bylaws, you need a referendum.
Well,
Yeah.
but
So
what would happen if in M09, you referred it back to M06 to get the document? That way you wouldn't have to change the bylaws and don't attach it.
But
It should be-
M06 refers.
It's the election form
Yeah,
that's posted.
but I understand that, but Augie just said M06 as it applies to the elections committee, as it applies to applications, refers you to M09. Now you're saying M09 is referring you back to M06. It's like a tennis match. You're gonna go back and forth.
Hey,
So
wait,
I-
wait,
I-
the racket team.
Without fixing the bylaws, how do you change it?
Well, in the software world, we call that a do-loop.
Yeah, but the easy solution for the moment, I believe the easy solution would be just to make sure M09 is consistent with the application
Yes.
that is on the website.
Yes.
So M09 stipulates attachment A, and attachment B are to be coupled together. And that's fine. Just make sure that attachment A is with attachment B on the website.
Right.
And then you close the loop.
Okay, then you closed it. Okay, that works.
And I don't know, the question that you're asking is, who has that responsibility? What I'm saying to you is, I think you just have to include a notation that says, if you're going to amend M09 in this fashion, please make sure attachment A is included with the form that appears on the website under the board of directors key.
Well, and what I'm saying is I think I think this last sentence does that by saying these two attachments make the current form. So whoever
That's correct, except, but you're correct. But no one's gonna know that if they don't go to if they never go to M09. If they pull up only the application that's at the website, they won't have attachment A.
Oh, so you're saying put it on the application
Yes.
that it includes? You're saying amend the
It
application.
should be a,
to say-
All I'm saying is take attachment A and put it at where the form is under the
Yes.
board of directors. Well, I don't care what you call it. As long as the two documents are coupled together, you can call them, cats and dogs. I don't care. But you can't sit there and say A and B go together here. And if someone never gets to here, but they're over there, they don't know about A. That's my point.
Can
That's
the web-
absolutely
could
right.
be very solved if you just said the application is this, and it's got the part that you actually handwrite and fill in, but it also, page 1 is the instructions, that the whole packet,
One document.
instead of saying, right, correct, like when Augie does the, scans the minutes and the tracker for us all in one thing, put the two into one PDF so that they will automatically get it in case, and you can't say then that nobody, well, I didn't download it off the website. It's part of, if you downloaded the application, you
It's
get the
one file.
instruction
It's
sheet.
just one
I don't care, again, I don't care what you call it.
Right,
Okay, all I'm saying is whatever you
It
have
should
in
be
here
there.
has gotta be in there, and
But-
right now it's not.
right.
Right.
And-
But we've been agreeing to this point now for about 15
Yeah.
minutes. I don't know what we're arguing about.
But your question is, how do you get that done? That's what.
Right.
Well, no, I only said that in the context of you saying there needs to be verbiage in here to make sure that they're tied together. And I'm saying there is verbiage. And you're saying, yeah, but it's not on the website.
Right, so if you,
But the
Why would
website
we-
is just an IT thing.
So what would
That's just
be,
an IT management issue. That's not a policy thing. Whoever creates the links for all these documents, they know it has to include all the pages of the document, right? It's just in this particular case, with that particular form, someone who didn't know, wasn't properly up to speed on what our resolution said, gave something to IT to stick in there and link. And IT didn't know any
so
different.
now,
And
So
that's
who
why
would
I'm
be-
hold on. That's why I'm suggesting you don't have to necessarily include the change over at the board of directors side of the website in the resolution. You just have to include a note somewhere to the board that if you're going to adopt this, please make sure you add a to what appears on your own.
Oh, okay. So that could be part of,
They should just do that because right now it's missing. And
Correct,
it'd be like,
Yeah.
but the,
Well,
It-
can
no-
we,
there's no guarantee that the staff will know, because the staff's gonna do the IT work, that the staff is gonna know what's
that
in
there should have been.
N09 in order to update the other side of the website. I'm just saying, make sure that someone has brought the 2 points together. Doesn't have to be in the resolution, we just gotta make sure it gets done.
there you
So-
go.
That's all I'm saying.
Then the
Yeah.
next part of that is, who does that? How do we get that information to say, is that something that we say to you as liaison? Will you take this and share that? Thank you for updating the application on the website.
Well, my
does it need to go-
suggestion to you would be put a footnote in that section of the resolution.
Mhm.
You know, attention to board and staff. You need to bring attachment A over to, just so someone sees it. Ultimately, it'll get deleted when we do the second reading, but there has to be a way to call it to their attention. If you want to leave it to me, I'll try to remember. But, you know, I'm just saying.
Again, I don't.
I think when we go to submit this
Mhm.
to the board, and again, I'm thinking maybe we should get into the kind of the habit of submitting these things directly and CCing
Mhm.
Steve, that in that submission, we can put that language
Mhm.
that, oh, by the way, should the board determine that this is appropriate to adopt, FYI, the link will need to be updated to include both attachments.
but it
and
has to be updated no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And
Okay.
we're doing that onto this existing policy? Onto the search committee, resolution? Are we keeping this resolution or are we attaching it to something else?
We have to keep
Has to
this
be.
resolution because the bylaws calls it out separately. So we have no choice right
Okay.
until the bylaws
Okay.
to keep it.
If we're moving on, I would suggest getting rid of E entirely.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think it muddies the water.
The bylaws explain how the secretary evaluates the applications. I'm not sure what the committee's doing.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm with
No.
you.
If there is no committee most of the time.
Right. Okay, I agree with that. Anybody else? Anybody else good with that? F, I just said get rid of the whole thing. That's talking about the search committee box, which I don't even think exists anymore. G, preclude announcing your intention in time, please authorize your release any applicant petition. Okay, what was next? So my next edit was on H,
Just getting rid of the shall.
just getting rid of the shall. And then paragraph 7. I just took out the sentence because the secretary's responsibilities
Yeah, that's.
are called out in this next paragraph. But they're also called out, aren't they listed in there in the bylaws?
Yep.
It seems like these were repetitive, as I recall.
For what it's worth, 7 says the association general manager somewhere above, it just refers to the GM, so you may want to keep the terms consistent. I don't care which one you choose, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a minor grammatical change.
That's a good point. Yeah, so I mean, if you look at A, it refers you back to the bylaws for what the secretary is supposed to be doing. And so I think that's the reason why I recommended just removing all of this, so we don't accidentally differ from what the bylaws say. And so if that was
I
the
think
case,
I think that's a really good idea.
yeah, so on that note, that's why I recommend just removing this sentence from paragraph 7.
Yeah.
As a matter of, yeah, that was adding those requirements into the bylaws or editing. That was part of the big change to the bylaws, I recall. So then that takes us down to so in paragraph A, candidate search, what does it say? Oh, of the secretary. Down in B, the Secretary of Association, Consultation, Legal Counsel, Social Staff, or Public Records solely responsible for determining eligibility. I think I left that in there because I didn't see that anyplace else. Is it? Is that in the bylaws too?
I thought that's one of the things we tried to clear up when we did the bylaw.
It's so long ago that I did this.
Yes, the Secretary of the Association in consultation with legal counsel, association staff, and/or public records is solely responsible for determining eligibility of a candidate. So that is right in the bylaw.
That's so we should delete
Take
that.
that out.
I would
Yeah.
take it out so you
Yeah.
don't get
What about-
changing.
What
So-
about notification?
Yeah, Augie, what about the next two there? The notification and the list.
Yeah, that's in the bylaws. Secretary shall, yeah.
Because then it almost sounds like we should just delete paragraph 8. Or delete all of it except, and then incorporate candidate eligibility requirements and just incorporate that sentence into the base paragraph and just delete all the rest of it.
This actually says the association within 3 days will publish notice of such ineligibility determination. Ineligibility, which is similar to B, but slightly different. So I'm not sure it makes sense to have both of them.
The bylaw says the association shall.
So it's the secretary deems the candidate ineligible. In such a situation, the association within 3 days of the secretary's determination will publish public notice of such ineligibility determination and basis for the determination.
So what this paragraph B is talking about is when the secretary does her initial screen, people are turning in their forms, right? And so she's looking at the forms to make sure they filled them out, answered all the questions. And if for some reason they didn't, or they put, there's some potential reason for rejection, seems to me that what this paragraph is, she goes back to that candidate, he or she, and says, there's a potential problem with your form here.
I don't know that
Prior to submitting, prior to determining that they're eligible and then submitting the list of eligible candidates to the election committee. Yes, no?
Yes.
Just talking about things happening after the form submitted and before June 1st. And the thing I read is also talking about rejecting eligibility.
Well, not only that, but the following paragraph says, the secretary shall notify each applicant of the acceptance or rejection of the candidate's application, including any reasons for rejection, if applicable, prior to submitting the list of eligible candidates to the election, but it shall be included with the notification. So I don't know that you need B in blue, because you sort of cover it below, the paragraph right below it.
Yeah, we've already agreed to get rid of B in blue.
Okay.
So now we're talking about the new B down there. The secretary should notify, which
Right.
it just sounds to me like they're just describing the pre-screening process that the secretary does for the form, for for the candidate forms. And if they look fine, then the secretary lets them know, yep, looks good, I'm adding you to the list, or nope, there's an issue and here's the problems.
So, but it,
And what you're talking about, there was two issues I remember, and I don't, maybe
I
we're
think
gonna
it's
start
just two
calling that.
different ways of describing it.
There was the initial screening.
Mm-hmm.
Person fills out their form, gives it to the secretary looks at it, does her due diligence, it all looks good, right? There was that. Then there was another issue where if information came to light after submission of the form and it was approved, but before the election, then what happened?
But I think
Well, but
this and this are describing
But that's
what
addressed-
happens the first step in two different ways.
Is the second step though addressed in the bylaws? What I just described, is that in there?
Yeah,
but I think it goes to, depending upon when the list of candidates go for printing on the ballot.
Yeah,
Something.
yeah, there was a timetable issue.
So I don't know that we ever get to the question you're raising, which is the secretary goes through their first review. Says there's a problem, go amend your application or something. I think you have to go by pretty much what's in the bylaws.
But all you're saying, you're,
I think you're right, Keith. The thing I was reading sort of addresses further information.
yeah, what happens if afterwards, if
Yeah.
it's discovered that some of the information's
If
inaccurate, or
something happens before the actual
that would
election.
make them ineligible.
But it comes to light after
After she does the initial screening and
the list of candidates have been forwarded to
Yes.
the elections committee.
yes.
Guy, what, 1 minute, guys, unless this has changed since I was the secretary. What happened was that the thing here, the Secretary of the Association in consultation, is solely responsible for determining eligibility of the candidate. Yeah, that's right. And the new B makes this more clear, but in retrospect, there also was in John Viola's office, and I can't remember what her name was, but she reviewed the secretary's work and signed off on it as well. Is that not still happening, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, there's an assistant secretary who I think is Linda. And
But I
I
don't
would
think that needs to
assume
be addressed
that
in
within
here.
John's office,
Well,
she's the one who's
Right.
providing assistance to the secretary of the association.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say that here, but that would be my assumption that the assistant secretary who is, as I say, physically located in the operations side of the association, I believe is still Linda. I'm not positive about that. Would be
well,
Linda.
they were the ones that were responsible for looking to see that there was no outstanding debt on the account before the secretary could do any notification. So maybe that's too much jargon to put into here, but that was the way it really worked then, and I'm not sure if it's changed.
I don't think it needs
That's
to
in
be.
the bylaws.
That's already in the.
Okay,
bylaws.
that's in the bylaws? Okay,
The
that's fine.
secretary shall
Why
make
don't-
reasonable efforts to verify that the association's records as of May 15th supports each candidate's eligibility. I mean, I assume you're describing part of that process.
Right.
Well,
Right.
the question is, since this committee may or may not exist, why do you want more information that needs to be there? Why don't you just refer it to the bylaws as stated in and just get rid of all the, I mean, because it's not the committee's responsibility, it's the secretary's responsibility.
Yeah.
So why does it need to be in a committee that may not exist?
Well, the secretary,
Other than to refer it to the secretary.
in the
Well,
reality
I think
is-
you're right.
Yeah.
And I think that information is included in the bylaws, if I remember correctly.
The less
Well-
information you put here, the easier it is for somebody to understand.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
you're
it's candidate search process.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not candidate processing, it's a search process. And it's about the search committee.
Right.
So I
Mhm.
agree. I don't know why the secretary's responsibilities,
It could even be in
it
there.
almost makes it seem like they're a member of the search committee.
Yeah.
They're not.
But they ought to be somewhere. And
That
if
it
they're not
refers to
here,
it.
where are they gonna be?
But aren't they in the bylaws?
Some of this, but not, I mean, it's not as much detail. It's more generic.
You think there's something substantive here that?
Well, like that B, the
Yeah.
secretary shall notify each applicant of the acceptance or rejection of
Okay.
the application. That's not in the bylaws.
Right. Now, the
And
problem
that's
is,
like, well, we want to provide a little more process, and so we're going to let them
But it-
know what's going on.
Well, who does the notification?
if the committee doesn't exist, then nobody can look at this anyway, other than the attachments.
Well, but if it does mention the secretary in there, then the secretary should be,
Right.
It doesn't really say what
In
happens,
simple form.
except for the process where if there's further information, then the association will have a public notice, but it doesn't really say.
Well,
Well, I think there's a more basic issue at hand here, and that is the secretary was never, in my experience, a part of this committee.
no. That's correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so I agree. Why is if the role of the secretary is included in the bylaws, then why do we need to have this in here? I think it's redundant and confusing.
I wonder, would it be appropriate to move this section, secretary's responsibilities, into M6?
I'm just trying to, I'm not sure about this. Camilla, Cammy, you might have a different recollection than I do, but my recollection is I was told by the elections committee that I qualified to run.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly how it works.
So it's probably in N06.
So it's an M0.
so the secretary of the directors did not notify,
I,
even though that's when I read the words the secretary, right? It's the secretary of the directors,
Mhm.
not the secretary
Well,
that works in the office.
this is what's
That's
in
correct.
the old N09.
Right.
We haven't changed any of this language.
Right.
So, and what I'm saying to you is my recollection, of course, there was no search committee when I ran, but
Right.
my recollection is I was informed, and I can't swear to this, but I was informed by the elections committee chair that I had qualified to run.
So they took on the search committee.
No, I'm
secretarial role.
not saying that.
Okay.
And I don't think that's really critical, because again, Bob's right. If there's no search committee, none of this means a damn thing. So it's either the ability to provide the notification that is in B, not blue B, but the other B, the B below it,
Right.
rests either with the secretary or with the elections committee. And what I'm saying to you is my recollection is I was notified by the elections committee. Now, we ought
Is there
to
word?
check,
You have it up?
we ought to check to make sure.
Doesn't say anything. The elections committee one does not.
So I'm wondering if words to that effect should be put in M09.
But then I thought they wanted to not
Or
be
six.
part of the process of determining if the candidates qualify. So why are they the ones telling you that you qualify?
No, I think that's where we have a little difference here. The secretary that's mentioned in this paragraph is not the secretary of the screening committee or the elections committee. It is the secretary of the board.
Yep.
Yes, John Latham, in this year's case, it rests with John Latham.
Right.
I mean,
So
He's the
it should-
he's the secretary.
Okay. So coming full circle, if that's a responsibility of the secretary, then it needs to be in writing somewhere
Mhm.
that that's their responsibility. And if it doesn't exist in M06, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for it to exist in M09, but if it doesn't exist
And
anyplace
it's
else,
not in the bylaws anyplace
and
else.
it's not in the bylaws,
Right.
it's gotta be somewhere.
But if there's no committee, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's why I think it ought to be moved back to M06. And the other issue that you brought up, which is germane, is the fact that the elections committee
It's moved
is
in.
about the business of handling the election and the appropriateness of candidates and those that are suitable by all the investigations that get done is the responsibility of the secretary, not of the elections committee.
Okay,
I mean,
Ellen,
that's my.
hold on. Go ahead.
I want to say that M09 is actually not search committee, it's candidate search process, which suggests like it's actually, this is how you get the candidates. So there's a search committee that's created, but there's also this other stuff that is performed by other people. So maybe it's not that much of a problem that it's in M09.
I agree.
That would be why all these responsibilities are laid out for the secretary, which is somewhat different than what Bob had proposed, which is if there's no committee. This resolution still lays out what the duties of the secretary are in terms of going through the election process up until the time the elections committee takes over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and until the bylaws get changed, this is gonna be the home of the form.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So no matter what, I mean, even though we pull it out and we stick it someplace, and we put a link to it, theoretically, it still comes from here.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe this stuff should stay in there.
It's a catch-22.
Is,
Yeah.
Well, it does seem like it warrants a close read with the bylaws to make
Is there
sure
an
that they're
actual-
still consistent.
and maybe my brain's.
so let's just for the
Is there
moment
an
here, because we're,
resolution that actually describes.
let's say for the moment that it should stay.
Officers of the board.
What about C?
Which one is that under? What do you mean, like, there will be X amount of directors, right? But of that, then there's an executive committee of president, vice
Can only
president,
see the
secretary,
beginning of it
treasurer,
from the
on the
screen.
director.
Can you
Where's that?
scroll up a little bit?
Which one?
Just
I
a little
want to see
bit.
the rest of C. No, the other way.
Oh, I am going up. Give it a second. Hold on.
It's two things, the list of eligible candidates and the registration form attachment B. of
Where am
each
I going now?
element. Scroll down,
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm sorry. Good. I've
Down.
Scroll down.
I
and
can't.
keep going.
You're talking to the screen, not me. So you gotta tell me when to stop.
Keep going,
Keep going.
keep going,
Keep going.
keep going.
Oh,
Stop, 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 stop.
Good golly, you people.
Right there, stop.
Right there?
Yeah, let it
All
focus.
right, give it a second.
No, focus.
It says it's
Oh,
done too.
okay.
There it is.
Okay, so does that stay too?
Seems like that is important. I don't see
Yeah.
that in the bylaws.
Yeah, the registration form, because people should be, the voters should be able to read the registration form, right?
Okay, so why don't we just say for now, we'll just leave these two in here for now, because we're gonna come back to this anyway after this is more cleaned up and people have had a chance to think about it. And we've got a few more edits here on this attachment A. Let's look at these. I suggest we look at these if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, 6 minutes.
Here's a-
Yeah, I know. Chop, chop.
Actually, don't have to.
Hey, we have rats in here. We're fine.
Okay, so ignore what's in yellow, because that's basically the same question I had earlier about the exception, and we
Yeah,
hadn't talked about it, so I don't have an issue with the yellow anymore.
Okay.
I forget what it said there before board of directors secretary, but I put that in there to be more specific.
It's actually the association secretary
Association secretary.
or secretary of the association.
Is that who the form is supposed to be initially turned into?
Yes.
Association secretary of the association.
the one on the website says it's turned into the search committee. I can see why you changed that, since the search committee is
Right.
usually not.
Yeah, okay, so that's what it's,
existence.
yeah, okay. And then let's see, I think in the next paragraph, I added, these edits just for clarification. Additionally, the HOA governing documents are available for review, blah, blah, blah. The office or on the HOA website. The OPA Elections Committee supervise the elections process. Can provide further instructions to all candidates in addition to that below. I took out will, because this is kind of back to the church and state thing where they don't necessarily want to get
But if
involved,
needed.
but
they
if
could.
needed, or if they so choose.
Right.
And then I deleted that sentence there, a board candidate must be an owner of record on January 1st of the year, because I think that was not in the bylaws. or somewhere that was debated and determined not to be a.
Well, it's not so, yeah, it's been changed. The context has been changed, but there's much more requirements to be a candidate than was simply stated there. The owner of record is a different definition, or is defined these days. It
That's
used to
right.
be owner of record and you're current with your assessments. Now you got all kinds of other.
I don't think you can just take that out, though.
Oh, no, I know what it's about, because there are additional requirements for the candidate and they're not listed here. So either you either gotta put them all in here because they're in the bylaws.
Yeah, I think they should.
502A, I believe.
You either want to refer to the bylaws, you don't want to just copy them in here.
Right.
Requirement that you have to submit a copy of the deed.
Yeah, but
Or the-
whatever the requirements are, they're in the bylaws. They should not be replicated here necessarily.
Correct.
But I think we should refer to the bylaws and say the candidate eligibility requirements are for the bylaws section,
Right.
you know, blah, 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 right?
The point of this form is so that a potential candidate can look at it and understand how they, if they qualify.
So you think we should repeat all that stuff?
But if the committee
No.
doesn't exist, you're
All
back.
right.
Well, the form itself will reflect what's required.
All
So
over this either, so if they pick this, maybe they do need to be able to see it right then.
You always gotta remember to do that.
course, these bylaws are the ones before all those.
You don't do anything referring to the section. And even then, you be careful.
Well, and, I mean, keep in mind that the form's not attached, you know, appendix B is not on here, but down at the bottom of appendix of the new form, the current approved form, it says that I have read or familiarized myself with all the governing documents and I agree to blah, 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 blah. So theoretically, if you're a candidate and you're applying, you have looked, you know,
At those, yeah.
to some extent at these documents.
Right.
Good point.
If you're gonna run for the board, you should have done your own research.
Right.
Good point.
And at a minimum, if you're a candidate, you would at least read the sections that involved
Right.
The
candidate stuff.
Right, yeah.
at a minimum. So my recommendation would be we just replace this with a sentence that references that section of the bylaws where it lists.
Good.
Right.
Okay,
Makes sense.
all right.
I would agree.
Okay, sounds like we got a quorum on that. And so then down below, I just changed will to can and may. Now that second one, that may,
Mhm.
is that
I
technically
think that should
correct?
be will.
You think it should be will?
I don't know. I mean, that's sort of a warning to the candidates that like the stuff they provide is not going to stay private. So I'm not.
And I think it also
Yeah.
says the same thing on the form too, on the
It
application
does.
form.
It says
Yeah,
on the
will
form,
be.
yeah.
So they just make sure it's consistent.
I'm not sure.
I don't know, I think I changed it from will to may, thinking that this shouldn't be a tasker. Should this? This is an information form for the candidate, right? So on an information,
Right.
should an information form be tasking the election committee?
I know I had to do one. Didn't you have to do one, Steve?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a will.
Oh, as soon as you walk away.
So what's the consensus, will or may?
Will.
I would
Will.
not mess with the second one.
Okay, roger that. So what I will do is I will take what we've talked about here and I will go back and I will edit this again and try to come up with a cleaner copy
Okay.
that we can then come back and look at later. And if we want to debate that other section some more, we can debate that other more. And
All right, so then after we're done with that discussion for now, the last thing is just to go over the governance document. So is there anything that you need to have questions about? Please, for the-
I don't know if I'm up to date. I mean, I missed a meeting. So if we can just run through this real quick in case I missed something.
Okay,
So B08, you were going to confirm that it was previously signed and approved. I know, ethics and conduct. So we were, the question was, did this thing ever get signed? Because if it didn't, if it never got signed in the first place and it never became a formal resolution and they have no intentions of
Making it.
making it one, then why are we carrying it on our tracker? So you were going to try to find out if it ever was signed,
Yeah.
if there was ever a
I can
version of
reach
this
out to
thing signed.
Linda because, I asked her if there was anything I needed to sign.
The
and I
website
be
says
here
it was
today, but
rescinded.
Didn't give me anything. so-
Rescinded June 2021.
Yeah.
08?
Yeah.
I know that's what it says, but I remember Wes talking in here that we're not sure it was ever actually, because if it wasn't signed ever, it was never rescinded
Right.
because it didn't exist.
Got it.
It never came to be.
It never came to be.
And if
so-
it never came to be, then it doesn't even need to be on our tracker. I can just delete it.
Well, other than inactive and just
Right,
leave it
just
there.
save
Well, but
the
it's not even
number.
an active
To keep
because
the
it never came to be. It was just an idea. It was an idea that nobody ever approved of.
So
Are you talking about adding a new one?
Is it in the book?
No, on this
Or
line,
is-
the question is, was there ever an official sign?
Do you have
B08?
resolutions in there? Can you get to the resolutions?
Resolutions.
Yeah, the book of resolutions.
B08 says it was rescinded.
Yeah.
The resolution was rescinded June 16, 2021.
Okay,
So there's
and that's
nothing-
what I have here on the tracker.
Okay.
So the tracker is correct, if nothing changed since. It was rescinded, it was one, and it was rescinded. That's what it's showing in the book of resolutions.
I think there was talk for a while of a new one and it never went anywhere.
And the new one, and that's the question, the new one is,
Just-
I don't know where it's at.
I remember that time, and I remember when this resolution was brought up and brought before the board, it was debated many times, but I don't recall it ever being approved and signed.
It was.
I don't think,
Uh,
I
The
don't
one
think it
for
was.
ethics.
Huh?
The one for ethics.
But it's in the book of resolutions
Said it's been,
It was
as
rescinded.
being rescinded, period.
yeah, leave it at that.
So you don't want to eliminate the number.
This is just an administrative function amongst
Yeah, this is
ourselves,
just
yeah.
for the track.
whether or not we needed to track something that never actually came
Well,
to be.
I'd only keep it there like you have it.
So if it was rescinded, should a copy of it be in the book of in the paper one, the paper book?
I think it says rescinded there when you look at
No,
it.
but when we rescind one, is there an historical copy that's kept?
Probably
That's,
the last.
you know, marked across, rescinded, deleted, whatever.
I think all that's reserved is the number
You'll,
itself.
you'll
Well,
cause,
that's the other point too, because if it was never signed, if it was only an idea, then that means B08 was never used.
Wow.
And the reason that came up is because of F0,
the one about interest.
yeah, the convenience fee.
That
right?
one
Still
that
has
never
not been
got a number,
So
and it's still not resolved.
Because we
So,
stuck that one.
in other words, this got added to the tracker because it was a resolution that was brought to the board to consider. So it looked like it was going to happen. And I think the reason we brought it up again for discussion is that it never happened. It never got approved. So if it never got approved, then B08 never got used. And
But
it
if-
should just be deleted from the tracker.
But it's in the book of
It
resolutions.
shouldn't be in the book of resolutions because it never existed.
No, there was one at one time.
And then it got rescinded and then
It's been rescinded. And my understanding is that the B08 designation still exists. You cannot just take.
No, that's true.
Right, so,
So there was one at one time that was
There
signed.
was.
Okay,
Right. That's what I thought.
all right. So now I just delete all this. All right.
Okay.
C01, we talked about that. I'm gonna update that as of April 20th.
Okay.
C03, we talked about that. I'll update that as of April 20th. Environmental natural, C10.
C14, we have to clarify if it truly, if the whole thing is,
Well, you're gonna
Well,
work
you don't
on
need to
that so
talk
you
about
get it straightened out.
so that one's just gonna stay.
I just leave it there until you get it resolved.
Yeah,
That would be my thought.
Now,
You guys
and then,
I
the convenience fee resolution one,
We sent that back to budget and finance.
Yeah.
And we, with the recommendation that if they wanted it to be an actual resolution with an F and a number,
They
that
gotta,
they had to create it, they had to put it
Right.
together and send it to the directors for the
First reading.
appropriate, readings and everything.
and then it
If they
comes here.
wanted us to look at it after the fact, that was, or before that went to the directors to make sure it fit the format, that was fine, but we
So that
were
was in
not
March.
going to do the work for them.
Right, that was March 8th. Should we send a
Right.
follow-up email?
I could do
I
that.
think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, are they charging this fee in the meantime while this is all in?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
So,
they
I
are.
mean, the
Oh,
fee's
it's
being
there.
charged.
Yeah.
They're,
yeah, that's almost,
I think they actually, if I remember correctly, I think Budget and Finance voted on a fix.
okay.
The resolution, which was, yes, there can be a fee charge, but it's up to the GM to decide what it would be. That's my recollection. But I don't think they've ever drafted anything.
Right,
So,
right. So we just need to remind them that, hey, it's still in limbo land.
Mhm.
And
either,
if
yeah,
they're
and-
working on it.
yeah,
then-
I mean, Doug knows about the governance document, so, remind him we're,
it's in the book of resolutions as a,
Well, and that's the problem.
I
The
know.
problem is it's actually somebody listed it in the book of resolutions. That's a
but
problem.
it's not.
If
a-
they come back and say, hey, it's not an issue, we're not worried about it, well, then they should go tell admin to remove it from the book of resolutions.
Because it's not a resolution.
It's not a resolution. That's right. Delete the line item and we'll delete it off ours. and get off
Doesn't
the
even
line.
have a number.
Right, exactly.
It's not it.
Whew. M2, amenity policy, let's see, board liaison to check the GM, about the manual.
yeah, and
I may as well, for
I mean,
nobody's gonna deal with it.
There's been some discussion about it and then it got pushed off.
Because it's still overdue. Do we want to just, who owns this? The board owns it. Do we want to just update it like we update all the rest
Yeah,
of them?
and just say it's been reviewed until we
It's,
are told
it's going to be
otherwise,
considered
because
reviewed.
The discussion was not in a positive light towards liaison, and I don't feel we need to make the liaison keep hashing it out with them.
And we're not getting any feedback from the board, so I say we just follow our procedure on it. What's something?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we talked about M6. We're gonna update that as a 427. And what else is on here? And search committee, we talked about that. So I'm gonna update the draft document. Okay, that's all I have.
I have no problem in bringing the draft on search, to the board. So when you finish the document, I'll create something to get it on the agenda and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, so we're done with the tracker then? Okay, so last thing, is the date of our next meeting is Friday, June 7th. Is there any conflicts with anybody for that?
Yeah, they can.
I'm good. Tell you on July 12th, I will be in Iceland. So very likely to participate.
I am not gonna be able to do June 7th.
Yeah.
All right.
And
In order to
Well,
have
wait
a
a minute.
forum, which sounds like
you
we
sure it's
might
not June
need to.
14th? I mean, we were doing the second Fridays of every month, right?
Right, but I think that one just, because there were five,
When's the board meeting?
Fridays in May, I think I went with the 7th, but I can double check. Oh, and that's because the director's meeting is the 15th, and I always tried to make it
Oh,
the week before the
Gotcha.
meeting in case we needed it. But you know what, we could make it the 14th,
I
and
will
it's
not
just,
be the 14th. My
it's
daughter's
just the day.
graduating from
Well,
high school that day.
and the problem is I may not be here the 14th either.
Or,
So I'm not gonna be here the 7th, I may not be here the 14th, so don't schedule this based on me.
well, the only other option, if we want to have a June, now, if we move it to like the 21st of June, then really that's just, a couple weeks later, and then the last one you said is like, July 12th, but, which one of you just said they can't, you said the 12th was not good in July, right?
I'll need to ask her to have some. I might be able to participate on teams from Iceland.
Why would you do that, Ozzy?
That's the question. Why would I do that?
So
Time.
my thought process was that we have typically skipped August.
Yeah.
Because that's the results of the new board and why do we need to do anything until the new.
They're not gonna do
session
anything.
And all of that. So we can skip August. Do you feel that we need to have a July one at all?
Why don't you wait till June? and
Let's-
find out?
Is that what, say again?
Wait till the next meeting to make that determination.
Because that's what I was saying. If we move a June one to like the 21st, later in the month of June, then we could potentially just skip a July one if you wanted to. I think, but.
June 14th and
I just-
21st are bad for me. So you probably won't have me. You would have me online for the 14th. The 21st, I might be on an airplane when we meet. I could probably get online. I think I
You
fly.
can probably do it. For,
I'll be with my mom in Kansas on the 21st, but I can probably join online
for the
for either, for the 21st.
21st,
14th, when my daughter graduates, that'll be harder.
right. You can't sit there and listen to us too, you know?
Yeah. As
So
usual, I
Keith,
can watch the video
uh,
and do the notes.
Keith, Camilla, and Pam, do you think the 21st of June would be better for you?
Well, I'll be back.
I can do 21.
Camilla, do you have an idea?
No, we're not going anywhere until December now, so whatever works for me, for you, works for me.
All right, so how about, I will have to, because I will need to email Michelle to ask if this room is available on the 21st, which typically I don't think they have a lot of meetings on the Fridays anyway, so it should not be a problem, but so let's make it tentative for right now that we're gonna move June to the 21st. And then okay. And then we'll decide in June what we're gonna do for July, if we're gonna have one, you know, and all of that, okay? Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Last chance to say something before we adjourn
The time,
the
right?
meeting at 3, we're gonna round it to 15, to 3:15 PM. Is anyone opposed to that?
No.
Hearing no objections, the meeting is adjourned.
Great.